The wolves are back, baby. That is right. For the first time since the 1940, Colorado has wolves. How? Well, after nearly a century of wolflessness, the state of Colorado released 10 wolves into the wild late last year, which is one of the most metal things a state can do. Does your state have wolves? Well, if not, we win this round. I'm going to explain why and how and what's going to happen in the future of this brand new wolfy frontier right after this. In case you don't know, Sam Newman, Denver area realtor. It's my goal to be your go-to real estate resource anywhere in this state, but I have this channel really just talking about Denver and Colorado as a whole. So I do things like discuss wolves. Why? Because I love Colorado and I love to talk about what's going on, and just because it's awesome. That's one of my core tenets. If it's awesome, let's do a video about it. So here's the deal. If you were a Colorado resident in 2020, you probably remember the wolf measure on the ballot, Proposition 114. The proposition was to reintroduce wolves into Colorado. At the time, there were no wolves in Colorado, and there haven't been for a very long time. Used to be here, natively here, and then they were essentially hunted into extinction, at least in the state's boundaries. Well, some folks decided it would be a good idea to bring wolves back, for a few reasons, not the least of which is they're awesome, but some actual other tangible reasons too, which we will talk about. So it went on the ballot, and voters voted, and what do you know, voters voted yes, let's bring those wolves back. There's pros and cons to it like everything else, but once the measure passed, the question became, okay, how do you do that? Well, between then and now, Colorado took those roughly 3.5 years to figure it out, to draw up a comprehensive plan to figure out how to get wolves back in Colorado, have them stick around in Colorado, and have it not ruin farmer and rancher lives. Because that's the thing, there's pluses and minuses to this like anything else. And one of the big voices of opposition was a coalition of farmers and ranchers saying, listen, yeah, wolves are awesome, but you know what's not awesome? Them eating our cattle, which they do. And we'll get to that. That's the main con of this wolf reintroduction. But what's the pro? Well, as I said before, wolves are awesome. But beyond that, the idea behind this was to actually restore balance to the ecosystem. Apparently, wolves are actually very important for a balanced ecosystem in a region like we have. Now, it's not that everything collapsed in that time frame when the wolves weren't here, but I guess there's no reason we can't always try to make things better. According to Outside Magazine, wolves are actually very important for managing herds of deer and elk. And some hunters will say, well, but that's our job. We want to manage the herds of deer and elk, and we're actually really good at it, and I would agree. Hunters are very good at managing those herds, but wolves do it in a special way. Wolves are actually very good at eliminating sick members of these herds. And that does a great job of limiting the spread of disease, which is very important. Some scientists also believe that for this reason, wolves can help slow the spread of chronic wasting disease, which if you know anything about the deer population is a huge, huge issue. So that would be worth it in and of itself. Some science also suggests that the presence of wolves in an ecosystem like ours can boost biodiversity, actually help repair fish populations. I'm not sure how that works, but I don't understand all of it. And even help offset the effects of climate change in forests. So it became time to bring the wolves back after the ballot measure basically said this is what we want to do. So CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, figured out a plan. And here's what they did. They rounded up 10 wolves, just 10, from Oregon. They went in and captured them. And don't worry, Oregon was cool with this. This wasn't like a cloak and dagger job. So they went into Oregon, where wolves already have a population, grabbed 10 of them and brought them to Colorado and released them last December 2023, in Grand and Summit counties. Grand County, you know, holds Rocky Mountain National Park, Winter Park, Granby, Grand Lake, and then right to the south of it is Summit County, which if you ski, you're probably familiar with, Breckenridge, Silverthorne, and the like. Really just dead in the middle of the state and dead in the middle of the Rocky Mountain region. What's interesting to me is that this is the first time a state, rather than the federal government, has taken these measures, has taken wolves and actively reintroduced them in the state. And this is the first phase of a 3 to 5 year plan. So that's how CPW is rolling this out. 3 to 5 years, and they're going to release 30 to 50 wolves. So 10 wolves a year just to get the ball rolling. And what should we expect? What is the idea behind this? How big is this Colorado wolf population going to be? Well, if all goes well, it's going to grow past 30 to 50, but probably not that much more, actually. Likely we're talking hundreds or maybe 1,000 rather than thousands or tens of thousands when it's all said and done. For example, the US government in 1995 released 14 wolves into Yellowstone National Park in a similar type of measure. And since then, the wolf population across really the entire western part of the US, California, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, has grown to between 2,000 and 3,000. So even 1,000 wolves in Colorado eventually would be a pretty big win from this measure. And 5280, which does a lot of good journalism here in Denver and in Colorado, released a timeline of what things should look like from the time that the wolves were released. So let's dig into that a little bit. Within 1 week after their release, so this has already occurred, the wolves are expected to make their first kills. Elk, they say, should be a large portion of their diets in addition to deer and moose, and even some small mammals and farm animals. Farm animals. That's what we were worried about. That's what the farmers were worried about. Well, we'll get to the numbers on that here in a little bit. So those wolves are already up there killing elk at this point. Around a month and a half, which is at this point January into February, the wolves should be established in their territory, carving out their turf. CPW says we don't exactly know how long it's going to take, but if history is any indication, it should take about that amount of time. They establish a territory which ranges from 20 to 120 miles. Then, winter of 2024 going into 2025, these wolves are going to start to assimilate. They're going to start teaming up. They're pack animals, but they've been released as individuals, so they're going to start to find each other and form in their packs. Then, February of 2025, it is mating season. The wolves in Colorado are going to start to mate, paving the way for future wolf generations. And then in April of 2025, we can expect the first wolf pups, multiplying the number of wolves here in Colorado. Then by 2029 at the latest, CPW will be done releasing wolves. That's it. Hopefully the plan worked and the wolf population is sort of sustaining itself on its own. Then long term, once the wolf population can be measured at 50 for 4 consecutive years, CPW will downgrade them from endangered species on a state level to just threatened. Then once it gets up to 200 wolves, they delist it entirely. They're just another animal, albeit an awesome one. Well, what about wolves killing livestock and that whole downside of it? Well, according to that outside article we referenced before, it's actually not that big of a deal. Yes, it sucks when a farmer loses a cow, but the numbers aren't big enough to make it an overarching concern. For example, Idaho has a wolf population of about 1,500, and there wolves kill an average of 113 cows and sheep every year, which sounds like a lot, but that's out of 2.7 million animals, so really just a small fraction. For reference, every year Idaho ranchers lose about 40,000 animals to non-predator causes like bad weather. And anytime livestock is killed in Colorado, the rancher will be compensated by the government. And if you're interested, Colorado Parks and Wildlife actually put a whole bunch of information online. They got FAQ pages and maps, and they outline the plan and everything. There's a whole bunch of good intel on the plan for wolves, what wolves mean for Colorado, and what the future might hold, so you can check that out on your own. And may I remind you that on that same ballot that the wolf reintroduction bill was passed, Colorado also passed the decriminalization of magic mushrooms. So don't let anyone tell you we're not still here to party. Thanks for watching, and we will talk soon. I love you, and I love wolves.